after doing a successful job at that, and being able to help architect your whole landing systems, at the time I then got promoted to leading the docking integration effort. Docking integration, what does that mean?
Like docking to the International Space Station.
Absolutely. So when you dock, you think of what? The 2 seconds they touch, right?
Yes.
Docking actually starts about 6 hours prior. You have, say, your spacecraft, and then you have, say, the International Space Station. And you have to first find and locate, because then, you know, you have these 2 spacecraft in orbit around Earth, so there's 2 of them going around, 17,500 miles an hour. You have to take one, and that's your target. Then you have your chaser, and this one has to go find the target. And then come together at under 1/10 of a foot per second. So let's talk physics a little, since you guys seem to be very savvy. When I want to catch a spacecraft in orbit, where do I fly?
Backwards.
So I'm flying in the same orbit, and my options are, do I fly higher? Do I fly in line with? Or do I fly lower? Who thinks higher? Who thinks in line with? Who thinks lower? Congratulations for lower, you are passing Physics 101. Yeah, because when you're flying lower, you're actually going faster. And so I'm trying to catch it, so I need to speed up. So I'm going to fly lower than it, and I'm going to have to come up for it, which just throws everybody off, because you're actually flying this trajectory with like arcs. I mean, I knew physics behind it, but seeing it done for real is a whole different thing. So when I took over docking and led that effort, who thinks I knew everything there was to know about docking? Good, nobody fell for it. I know not nearly enough about docking. I never docked a spacecraft. What was I doing leading this team of like 30 PhDs? Each of them knew a lot about a little. And that's the cool thing with some of the PhDs, brilliant people. And I love being the dumbest person in the room, because that means I have a room where I can just absorb all these great things from other people. That's what I want to be in. If I'm the smartest one in the room, I probably don't want to be in the room, because I might not have enough to learn from people, and I love to learn. So first thing I had to do when I took over that job was I had to learn how to dock a spacecraft. So I got to spend time going through the astronaut training, which is great because I want to be an astronaut, learning the same way astronauts do of how you dock a spacecraft. And then now I've gotten to the point where I can teach astronauts how to do it. But what's that like? Does anyone here like video games? A couple people? All right. So when you have a video game, what do you have? You have a controller of some sort? Handheld, joystick, cool, okay. A screen? Maybe a really big screen if you're lucky. As cool as it gets. Okay, now imagine this. Instead of just your little controller, you have the whole aft cockpit of the space shuttle. And all the buttons work. And then not only that, each spot there's a window. You have a screen there. So you have multiple screens showing you different data, feedback, images, etc. And then you're inside this big dome that wherever you look around you simulates the orbital mechanics of what it's like to be in space. So it feels like you're just floating outside the Earth and like watching it move underneath you. It's just amazing. And your mission, should you choose to accept it, is to dock your spacecraft to the International Space Station or target spacecraft of your choice. Who thinks that'd be pretty cool? Who would like to do that for a day's worth of work? Because, oh, by the way, that's called a simulator, and you get paid to work in those things. Again, where was this memo when I was your age? Because I love video games. And some of my favorite days were days where I would get to dock spacecraft. You do a pre-briefing, so you have to figure out what you're doing, the flight plan, etc. Then docking takes about 6 hours, so that's the bulk of your day, is running through that and flying a spacecraft. And then you have to do a post-briefing to say what you did right or wrong and what you learned. And you got paid for it. Pretty darn cool. Simulators are awesome, whether it's spacecraft or jets or submarines or all different things. If you like any of that stuff, there's endless possibilities for you. And not only that, one of my favorite things was not only just designing and getting to learn how to fly the spacecraft, but really getting to break it. That's right, figuring out how many ways I could crash my spacecraft and kill my crew. Sad, morbid, I know, but you know what? I'm designing a brand new spacecraft, so every time I come up with a problem, I then have to pose it to my team and say, hey, what do we do if this string of thrusters isn't working? That's going to be, say, a fatal day for my crew. How do I get them back? How do I get this to work? And then we have to figure out redundancy in our design. So it actually was a really good learning experience and a whole lot of fun at that. So that's one of the things that I didn't think I would get to do or even imagine, even though I studied aerospace and orbital mechanics. getting to actually see the stuff you're doing, like in class now and in labs, applied to real life, makes it so much more fun, at least for me, because I'm pretty hands-on. It kind of makes it all make sense. Another thing that I never thought I'd get to do, but I was excited about, is wear spacesuits. I mean, why? And did I say I was an engineer? Why am I in a spacesuit?
Because you want to.
Because it's part of your job.
It is part of my job. I got paid to be in a spacesuit. Why was I in the spacesuit though?
I was saying you get paid.
Find more problems.
To find problems, yes, but with what?
The spacesuit?
Wrong! That was what I was fishing for. I'm not a spacesuit engineer, as cool as that is. So, I'm not actually testing the spacesuit. What do I design?
Space
Your
craft.
shirt. You
And
tested
who-
your shirt.
And who flies in spacecraft?
You.
And astronauts wear
Up in space.
spacesuits! So I think, I'm doing the design of the displays, of the controls for the astronaut, trying to figure out where to put everything and doing it from a good engineering perspective. So right, you want your screens in front, you want your main buttons and controllers right here. This makes all sense, right? Emergency buttons on the side, signals of that nature on the side because they don't want them to distract you. This just looks like a robust design. Okay, so now we're going to put on our spacesuit. We crawl in, because you crawl into the spacesuit in the back. Then you fit your little collar on. It's pretty secure like a turtleneck. Put your little gloves on, clink, 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 clink. Put your boots on, lace you up, because they have suit engineers, so suit engineers will be putting you in and out of spaces. Put your helmet on, and we're good to go. Let's go climb in the spacecraft. So let's evaluate our design. Displays, beautiful, I can see them, lovely. Okay, so my buttons, can you reach them? Oh wait, now that I'm in a spacesuit, I can't reach as far as I could. Having it pressurized is impairing my ability to reach as forward as I thought I could. My reach has been shortened because of that spacesuit. That's a little harder. My buttons, do I have them, can they flip well enough? I have these big gloves on now. So imagine wearing your ski gloves and stuff and how easy it is to do stuff in zippers and smaller things. Not as easy. You need to think about that with your button displays. Okay, what about my emergency buttons? Over here to the side. Well, my shoulder mobility is also constrained in the spacesuit, so I can no longer reach them. And those displays that were kind of like just a flash if it's emergency, with this helmet on, I can turn my head right and left, but my field of vision has been impaired, so I can no longer see out here. I can only see within this range. So what was great as an engineer, or so we thought, was not at all great for an astronaut, but we would have never known that until we got to put spacesuits on and do some evaluations. And that's what you see in the orange spacesuit here. That's your ACES, which is like a high-altitude pressure garment, essentially like a little more complex, but similar to what fighter pilots wear. But my favorite of all spacesuits is the white one. Does anyone know what that spacesuit is?
The one you wear in space.
Where there's no oxygen.
Where there's no oxygen, it is not for the moon, it's actually for EVAs, extravehicular activities, also known as spacewalks. It is the one that you wear when you're outside space station or outside shuttle or Orion. Why would I think that one's the very coolest of all the spacesuits?
Because I don't.
Because of
White?
Because it's your own personalized spacecraft. That's all you have to keep you alive, and this thing is completely tailored for each person that's in it. So it is essentially your own spacecraft, and you live in that spacecraft for 6 to 8 hours in the harsh vacuum of space, and that is all you have to keep you alive out there. It makes you the right temperature so you don't get too cold or too hot. It keeps you protected in case, with multiple layers, in case things puncture, so that way it doesn't cause decompression or kill you. It makes sure that you actually have water. It filters all of your air that you're constantly breathing, and it even has a little food stick in it so you don't starve. But with the food stick, you gotta be careful because it's kind of mounted up front here. Because you can't put your hands in, like if you get a nose itch, clink, clink, you can't itch your nose in the spacesuit either. So you have your little food stick here, and you take a bite, 2 bites, but then when you're halfway through, you just have to go for it with the rest of it, because if you try to take a 3rd bite and pull it out and don't get it all, well, that thing's going to float around in there and probably get stuck somewhere awkward, because astronauts always come back with stories about them getting like melty and stuck in an armpit or somewhere else that's less desirable. So you got to think about all those things when you're doing the design for it, because there's some very interesting things that happen in microgravity that we all take for granted.